Welcome to Cast of Creators. We're your hosts. I'm Nelson Thal.
And I'm Casie Stewart. We've spent our careers in media and publishing, and now we're setting the stage for creative people who inspire us to share their stories.
Cast of Creators is presented by our new social browser called Hover.
Hover makes browsing fun. You can follow people and your favorite sites to discover and discuss the web all in one place. Download Hover, that's HBR, in the App Store or at the Play Store.
Today's guest is Lauren McPhillips, who you might know from Instagram as This Renegade Love. She's a brand strategist and community builder who's had a few viral moments on the gram.
She has. We talked about travel, facing your fears, building brands that feel good, and Lauren's decision not to have kids, and why so many people have a huge problem with it. Let's go.
Lauren, This Renegade Love.
Yes.
I think that's a wonderful name. We were just talking about how difficult it is to find a name for something.
It is.
What's the story behind that name?
Oh my goodness. You know what? There's a story behind it.
Great.
So
It's like there's no story.
yeah.
Next.
I mean,
Next.
I'm such a big fan of storytelling around brands. So I was, when I wanted to launch a blog, I was working in PR for Kentucky, which is how
We know
I met
each other.
Casie, yeah. And so I had this idea where I wanted to start a blog that profiled people who were doing really cool things with their lives, had quit their 9-to-5 to start their own business or start a charity program, or just kind of go against the status quo. And I was just thinking, I'm like, I didn't want to call it Lauren McPhillips. I didn't want it to be my name. And I kept thinking it over and over. And I had like in my notes section of my phone, you know, just dropping things in, and nothing was really sticking. And then I was listening to a song actually by a Canadian band called the Rural Alberta Advantage. And they have a song called Summer. I know it is. And every time I'm like rural, like I can't say the word. I can't
Rural's
say the
a tough
word
one. It's
rural.
Yeah, no, I know.
Rurally,
Especially when you
rural
really
off the
need to say it.
tongue.
So I really needed to think about it there. But so they have a song called Summertime. And in the song, they say, when I'm middle-aged, you'll tell me that you loved me like a renegade. And all of a sudden, that word renegade, I was like, this is it. This is the perfect description for
It's a
the
good
type
word.
of people I want to profile and that I want to speak to. And then again, that word love in there. And so I kind of, this renegade love. And everything just kind of pulled together.
It's amazing.
And
So that's
yeah.
your phrase.
Yeah. It was like I pulled it kind of out of nowhere.
Because
And
when
yeah.
Casie and I were talking about this, and she's like, I think it's from a song.
Yeah.
But only the word renegade.
Yeah, I knew
Is
there was
from the
some
song.
song
Yeah,
connection.
it said, when we're middle-aged, I'll tell you that I loved you like a renegade. And I was like, renegade. And then I was like, love. And
I
I was
actually
like,
give me
yes.
goosebumps. I need to listen.
it was one. It was, and that's why I asked with you guys, you know, how was it, when did you have that moment of like, oh my God, this is it? Because that's exactly the moment I had. And then everything fell from there. And then the profiles that I did of people where I would interview them, you know, when people were doing podcasts really, and it was just blog interviews. They were the renegades, and that's what I called them. It was the Renegade Profile. So
Yeah, and I loved all of them. And they're just they were such great posts. I mean, love your blog. I was really happy when you were like, I'm going to start a blog because I'm like a grandmother of blogging. So to know that you were doing that made me feel really excited because we met originally when you were doing PR with Kentucky. We reached out to me and invited me on this insane 10-day trip to Thailand. Amazing. Still top of one of the best times I've ever had.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole every day of that trip.
It was such a time.
Did you all fly there together?
Yeah,
Most of us.
That was
That's
a Canadian
fun.
trip. So I was working when I worked with Kentucky, I was doing PR for them in Canada, and then I moved to the UK to do their global PR and brand partnerships. And so they have a ton of offices around the world, and so that was kind of overseeing that. But the last trip I did with the Canadian office was that Thailand trip. So it was all these Canadian content creators that we brought together.
A lot of YouTubers.
Yeah, a lot of Kentucky was very early in investing in YouTube content strategy, which was, I learned so much from that. But that trip, there were some people from Vancouver, so it was all over Canada. But yeah, we kind of, I remember being scared shitless because it was the first time I'd really led this trip, and I was with all these creators, and I was a PR, and I was like, at the airport, and I was like, oh my God, what if our connecting doesn't what do I do?
Right.
I don't know what to do if we miss our flight and all
you're
of this.
the point person for the friend
and
on
all
the
of us
trip.
are just all of us are most of the people are big personalities and
And I was so excited, but we sat in the lounge together before, and that was the first time, and it was just an immediate connection.
Yeah, we were you're so funny.
I just loved you, and it was really fun. But even on that trip, Lily Singh, who now is a
superstar,
she was on the trip with us. It was this really, because she started as a YouTuber, so it was this real amazing group of people. And we just did island hopping all over Thailand.
I got a tattoo there. I was we had a break one day, and everyone's like, I'm going to nap. I'm going to edit my video. And I was like, see you at dinner. And I went and I got
Is it the hot air balloon one?
Yeah.
Yes,
And it's my whole, they were like, did you just go get a fucking tattoo? I was like, leave. I'm wild.
So fun.
It was so fun.
Yeah.
And the funniest thing, I think most people have never gone on a trip with a lot of YouTubers, but I have this distinct moment. We went up to this temple, which is 2,000 stairs. So everyone's walking up the stairs, not us. Everyone's walking up the stairs like this with their cameras, not their phone. It's an actual film camera. Yeah. And I just was I laughed so hard because that's going on a trip with a whole bunch of content creators is different than anything else. If you're with foodies first. I'm if you're going with content creators, it's we were all I'm going up the steps to this temple. And it just was so fun. And I made, friends on that trip that I'm, still friends with people. And Gunnarola was on, he hasn't come on the podcast yet, but he will.
True. Yeah.
And we had met before, but he was on that trip. And it's just spending 10 days with some people where you're traveling and doing. We just did so many fun things. We did safari. We did I don't know, all kinds of.
Yeah.
It was great.
And I feel at that time, that would have been what year? 2013? It was 2013, I think.
Yeah, somewhere.
It was around there because I lived in the UK in 2014. And that's, so I feel
it was that long ago.
It was that long. And so that was really before, because now that have this, now that I have this Renegade Love, there's been lots of press trips and things like that. But at the time, that was one of the things I was so grateful about working with Contiki is we were really into that space of, we didn't want to do traditional PR. It wasn't about working with people who were at magazines. We were who are these people that are creating their own content? And so we kind of got in there really early, and our entire budget was based around content creators and having them do film what their experience was like in a really organic way. And so that was my first kind of, not that trip, but really working in that space. I was this is wild, seeing all the cameras come out and just people creating content on the spot, and then also seeing it being produced and come to life. It was pretty incredible. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what was the deliverable for you on that trip?
I don't know. Just have a fun time. Document it.
So basically document it. And but everything that you're sharing, you're basically, the props to Contiki is
it was a Contiki
about
trip.
The trip. It's a Contiki trip.
And we had a hashtag, which was
hashtag no regrets.
Yeah, hashtag no regrets. And I actually had an unlocked phone. So the night that I got there, and no one else had this was my because I remember looking at a stat, and everyone posted a lot, and a lot of people had more followers than me. But during the trip, I was on fire with posting content because I popped out my SIM card. I bought a new SIM, and I had my own Wi-Fi, and I was
and we were all hotspotting.
It was it was a good trick because also not your phones. It's more common now to have an unlocked phone, but back then it was you didn't, and I had this cool thing.
Yeah. But, and I think we've spoken about this before, but I feel that trip, since then, as I said, since I started this Renegade Love, then I was going on press trips and as the content creator and the PR person. And
not worrying about anything.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I'm
fuck it.
Great. And then it became, I started noticing, and with every brand partnership now, at that time it was still very organic, and it was just kind of okay, come on this and create what you create because we love what you do, and we just want to, we just want say it in your voice, vibe there. And and now I feel with brands, it's very much, we can save money by having, instead of doing traditional advertising where you're paying for a set and you're paying for a photographer and a makeup artist. Now we have people that can create this content. And then everything gets very prescribed. and very, here's the key messaging and kind of shoving it in there and
too prescribed.
And exactly. And so so that was like, I look back at that time very fondly. And I think that's where my love for really authentic storytelling, that's where it really comes from. And seeing also how impactful and effective it was. And like, why do we move away from that? It was so
like
great.
I have people that are like, I would see them and be like, man, I love that Thailand trip you went on 5 years ago. It was fun. Like, seriously, we were like, oh, that looks, like, oh my God, remember Bajan, our elephant?
Yeah.
Oh, we just had, we rode an elephant.
It was a time.
It was
probably wouldn't do that now, but
no, I probably, I don't think I would do that again. But I mean, at that time, it was a nice memory.
It was a good memory.
Yeah, I guess like since then, there was no TikTok then. No. Instagram was, not nearly as popular as it is now.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the platforms? They all have changed quite a bit.
Yeah.
Since then.
Yeah, I think that the way social media is now, I think there's a lot of people and like it's really fighting against these algorithms. It feels like they're switching all the time. There's always, it's really difficult to plan a strategy without having to change it every few months because the platforms are changing every few months. So for me, what I really focus on and what I think, what I'm doing now with This Renegade Love in terms of brand strategy, both for brands and for content creators, is building a brand that is sustainable past any trends, any algorithms. So how do you build a brand and a strategy that you can use? It doesn't matter what the platform is, and you can use it to grow and to connect to people in a way that seems really authentic and makes sense to you, and also that you can grow over time. It's very intentional, and it's not just relying on how many followers you have if brands want to work with you, but how can you create a community and then create products to do with your brand that actually build a business? How can you think long-term rather than just like this silo of, okay, like how do I make a reel go viral? Like who cares? Because it's going to change the next day. So really focusing on what that brand strategy is and then building a content strategy from that. That's where I'm focused now.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well said too.
Yeah.
And in order to deliver on that, how many platforms do you think are necessary?
I don't know. I think there's different uses for different platforms. So we talked about this before, the importance of having a hub, whether it's your website or an email list, some place where you kind of control that a bit. An email list is great because you have access to those emails whenever you want.
Yeah.
You're not relying on an algorithm. No one's changing that. You have that direct access to people. And then a website, obviously, where people can find you. And again, you can communicate with people at any point. And then I think with I love TikTok and I'm so fascinated by it because their algorithm and how viral you could go is absolutely wild. Like I've had some random videos. I don't even have a big following on TikTok at all. And I've had some videos get like over 1 million views and
oh my God.
And it's like, and they just take off. But what I think that TikTok is really good at is the community is not there. I think Instagram is where the community lies, and that's where you can build and really talk to people and build that community. TikTok is a great resource for directing people to other places. So whether it is directing them to your website. So like for me with TikTok, my plan is to talk about brand strategy on TikTok so that people will then come buy courses from me. And I'm just kind of funneling them into there. And then Instagram is where I build that community. I have those conversations that really matter. And then Pinterest, I think, is like a massive...
I know, don't sleep on Pinterest. I have I got an email. I love how they just started emailing like, your pin got 10,000 impressions. And I was like, ooh, that old thing?
Pinterest is
it's like an old pin. And it's like...
But that's the point is that
it's evergreen there.
Yes, it's evergreen. With Instagram, you post once and it's like forgotten about. It just kind of like it falls down. And then with Pinterest, it's evergreen and it just grows and grows and it's a search engine. So if you can optimize it, then it's going to continue to grow. It's an amazing traffic driver. It's a great way if you do have an email list to drive people to that if you have like an opt-in incentive. So Pinterest is like it's unreal. At one point when I was really focused on it, it was the biggest traffic, even though
it's still one of the biggest traffic drivers to my website
blog.
of anything. Like people don't, the conversation happens in Instagram. Like I can post a link. Like most people are not going to check out my new blog post from Instagram. They'll just look at my picture and like post a comment there. But Pinterest, I find one of the things I really love about Pinterest is like, let's say you create some Halloween content, that Halloween content every year, that content 6 months or 3 months ahead of Halloween, that content will like pick up again. You want a holiday DIY? Boom. Every year it slaps. Like it will be popular all the time. Like it's, and I often go to like, they have like creator kind of summits things online. And it's like, they are great at recognizing trends that are coming up. And I just think it's a really, really good traffic driver.
Yeah. I remember listening to, it was someone from Pinterest who was like the senior vice president of something. And what she was saying is the difference between Pinterest is that like every other social platform, they are just wanting you to stay addicted and stay on there. And with Pinterest, the whole point is that you go on there to learn how to do something and then you go away and do it. And I thought that was such a smart way of putting it. It's true. Like people go to look for recipes. I'm looking for a recipe and then I go away and do it. So the point isn't to like stay there. And so it really is. It's like Google, but visual. And I love it. Yeah. Love Pinterest.
Shout out Lex Nico.
Yeah.
She listens.
What's the connection between her and Lex? Oh, she works
for Pinterest. Yeah.
She still does? Is that where she
works? She lives in LA now.
How does she do it all? I don't know, but
me neither.
I didn't realize she still worked with
she does. Got her finger on the pulse of everything.
I know.
Yeah.
What a queen.
Yeah.
So where are you from? Where'd you grow up?
Oh, you know what? I grew up in good old Oshawa. So exotic.
Wow, the schwa.
Yeah, so I grew up, my parents are Scottish, so they immigrated from Scotland and moved to Oshawa because the GM plant was there. And so I grew up in Oshawa and then went to school at U of T and moved to the
What'd you study there?
I did a double major in English Lit and European History.
Oh, that's
wow.
And then I did a postgrad at Centennial for book and magazine publishing. And then that's how I got started at Style at Home magazine. So I worked in publishing before working in PR. Yeah. And then I moved to the UK for a bit, lived there for a bit when I was working with Kentucky. Met my husband there, who's Australian, so it's very intercontinental, everything.
Yeah, sure is.
And now we live in Prince Edward County.
Yes, because you moved there right before.
In 2019 we moved there, kind of on a whim.
Yeah, I remember that. You're like, I'm moving. I was like, okay, random.
I know. I never thought I would live anywhere but the city. And we've been going there for little holidays and like little weekend getaways.
I haven't visited you there, but I love the vision of the life you have built for yourself there. It just looks so cozy. And
it is.
I love the sound of the leaves in your backyard and how the snow looks because I've seen it on your...
I know. It's so quiet and it's so peaceful and I do love it.
Are you driving back tonight?
I am, yeah. Although my friend was like, come stay at my house. Like I always have places to stay, which is great in the city because I do miss the city. Don't get me wrong. There's definitely I love, and I have there's a great community in Prince Edward County. I have really good friends there, but I miss the vibe and the energy of the city. I miss it so much. So I always try to come in as much as possible. And
What's the drive like? How long is that drive?
Oh, it's not bad. It's 2 hours, but everything in the county so far. So it's I'm used to driving everywhere. I have to drive half an hour to get groceries. So
yeah, that's what it was like when I lived
another
at
hour?
Yeah.
That's like my in-laws who live in North Bay. That's their exact attitude to driving.
You're just just stick on a podcast and go. Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
So you Style at Home.
Yes.
What was your role there? And walk me through what your sort of your day-to-day is like at a magazine. At a magazine,
yeah. So it's, you know what? I really got a real good footing for a lot of things in that at that magazine. So it was my first job out of university. I had an internship there. And at the time, this is going to sound so old, but Casie, you're not going to think it. It was the website was just a thing then.
Yeah. That's around when I started mine.
Yeah. It was just so I remember when I was interning for the magazine, but they were just starting to expand the website. So they were redoing it. They wanted a web producer outside of the web editor. And so I ended up getting hired as a web producer. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I'm going to get a magazine. It's cool. Like, it was just incredible. So I did web producing for like 6 months.
This is in Toronto?
This is in Toronto, yeah. And so we were on the same floor as like Elle Canada and Canadian Living. And so
Is this a Rogers publication? Who owns this?
Transcontinental was at the time, yeah. And so, and I was just like, this is like literally my dream of what I've always wanted to do. I was making like peanuts and I was like, I'm rich. Like, this is great.
Yeah.
And then, after 6 months, the recession hit. And I mean, we all remember that. And I remember
that was bad.
And especially in publishing. Yeah. So many people got let go. And I remember getting called into our executive editor's office. And I was like, oh my God, they're going to let me go. This is like, and then she said, so there's an opening for a senior print editor. We think that you would be great for it. And I was like, is this a joke?
You're like me?
Like, I've never even been a print editor, let alone a senior print editor at a national magazine. And then, I mean, at the time, obviously, now I look back and I just think, okay, they had no money.
Yeah, exactly.
Someone was like shoved in there.
They were like, she'll do it.
Yeah. Get her, like, it'll go through a million other edits after. But at the time, it was also, that was my first experience of, holy shit, I'm so scared. Just go for it.
Yeah.
And it was my first experience. And I've had so many experiences since then of, this is terrifying. I'm comfortable where I am, but just go for it. You have no idea what you're doing, but just go for it.
Yeah, just hold your head high and act like you know what the fuck you're doing.
Just go for it. So
you land that job, and how do you really get your bearing and understand what you need to do to excel in the role?
I just I think it comes from, I think when you're young as well, you have a whole different, you don't have that mentality. Like, I think now when I'm older, you overthink everything. And when you're young, you think you know everything. Like, even though I was scared, you think that you're like, oh, I have so many great ideas. I could do this and this and this. And I kind of went into it like that. And also I was also just really willing to learn. Like, I was so curious about everything. And
who are you learning from in that role?
I was really, really fortunate that all the people I worked with were just great at like pulling me into things, pulling me into meetings where I could sit and observe. And so I wasn't necessarily part of it, but I was listening to it. All the planning meetings. And then they would ask me what my opinion was. And I always think back to like just planning meetings and being like absolutely terrified to give an idea. And I think now, when you're old, I just like own that meeting.
Throw my ideas out there.
Yeah, but it's so fascinating when you think back at like how you were at the time. But all those experiences lead you to where you are now. But yeah, it was such an interesting experience, and that lasted for a year. And then
this is 09.
Yeah,
08, 09. So it's like in the recession. So you're getting this job in the recession.
And I learned so much. And at the same time, I still wanted my foot in the door of web. And so I was doing at night, I was still writing web articles as like a side job. And then the website just started expanding. And they said, I was really, really good friends with the web editor. And she said, we're growing the web team. I'm going to become a senior web editor. There's going to be a web editor. Everyone told me, why would you go from a senior print position to a web editor?
Wow.
And I just did it anyway.
You're like,
very nice.
Because I just smart. But at the time, no one did. But I was young. And again, I was like eager to learn something new. I saw the way the web was moving. I really loved being able to connect to people in real time, which we weren't able to do, obviously, with a magazine. You're shooting Christmas in July. Everything is so far behind. And so I really loved the immediacy of the web and how we could because no one really cared about it, it was a little bit still like the Wild Wild West, and we could do what we wanted. It was so creative. We started working with bloggers and influencers, and at the time, which influencers were bloggers.
Yeah, it was just bloggers back then.
Yeah. Instagram had just started. So I was like, we need to get on Instagram. Let's get this going. No one had any idea what it was. So it was
like,
really
she's the web person, like, ooh, the internet girl. Because like I was always that person. Yeah. They're crazy ideas.
Exactly. Just like showing up to meetings, being like, whatever. So it was great. And that was where I got really excited about working on the web and working, especially within publishing and blogging. And so we had the Style at Home blog that we launched. And so that was all kind of happening at that time. And then I ended up going on a press trip. And on the press trip to Italy, the PR woman said, you should come work for us. And that's why I started working at Kentucky.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you go on a trip to Italy.
Yeah.
With a client of Style at Home?
And what I felt so bad about was that one of my closest friends, Natalie, who was my boss, the senior web editor at Style at Home, she couldn't go, and she was like, you know what? I got offered this trip. I really want to give it to you. So when I told her I was leaving, I was thanks. I know. But she knew it was time and so supportive. She was amazing. Still
that sounds like a fun trip.
It was. And it wasn't even with Kentucky. It was they have a parent brand. And so it was with another.
And this is an advertiser that is an advertiser in Style at Home. What's the connection to Style at Home with the parent brand?
It was because we talked about travel and design and travel and it was in Italy. So it was just beautiful architecture and design and all of these. It was just, we had an actual travel part of the magazine. And then on the website, again, we just did whatever we wanted. We're
wow.
Yeah, sure.
Style and travel.
Yeah, Italy.
So if you're offered a free trip to Italy,
take it.
Take it. Yeah.
You never know.
Opportunity awaits.
You never know
what,
take the trip.
Yeah.
You never know what doors might open.
And that was that kind of next step of being oh, I really love what I'm doing, but I'm I'm such a curious person that I don't think I've stayed at an actual role for more than 2 years, in one role. The same company maybe, but not in the same role. I'm always looking for more and to be challenged.
Eager to learn.
Yeah. So it was time for me to move on. I again had no idea how to do PR, but I was I'll figure it out, and I did. Yeah.
I remember one time I was during TIFF, and I was maybe I should get a job because I'd been freelance blog Casie for a long time. And I got a call from a recruiter. They're this agency wants to know if you would be interested in being their social media director. And I was I never even worked at an agency. I was of course I want to be the director. And I did the interview on the Tuesday. By Friday, Thursday I was hired, and Friday I started. And I was I'm your director. I've never even worked in, my last job was years ago doing social media for Much Music and MTV. And I was I am now the boss.
And sometimes you just got to take it. That's what I've learned is just, even if you're it's when you're scared of something, that's the best time to move forward with it. Because that's always all the best things are on the other side of that. And you're going to learn so much. You're going to grow so much. I've always been someone who has seen the opportunity and just gone for it. And
Have you girls done any firing in your day?
Oh God, no, I don't think I ever could. I haven't
fired anyone either.
When I'm quitting, I become so emotionally attached.
I was let go from a job.
I don't think I've
done any.
Oh, I've never fired anyone.
Oh no, I could never.
I don't think I would.
A lot of seniors getting tossed around. Senior this, senior that. No,
I never had to let anyone go.
The thing. I'm I leave before it gets too heavy.
I was I don't know. I mean, your time here is over. I don't know. What do you say? We don't like you. You can't sit with us.
Yeah.
I would think, Casie, you'd get into a job and be excited to fire some people. Well,
that's what you think about me.
Yeah, you get in that position, get a little power.
Yeah, no, I've not. Even when I had that job at that agency, I had a couple interns that started working there, and they've gone on to have great careers, and I'm still friends with them.
Oh,
after they left. About building relationships, I will find it hard to fire someone.
I'm the same. Any job I've quit, I've cried during when I've been quitting. Because I do. I'm the same. I become so close to the people that I'm working with, and I feel bad. And I always give 3 months notice because I'm I don't want to leave you high and dry. Yeah. But I think that's important as well. I think it's anytime I've left, I'm I never want to burn bridges. It's just time for me to leave, and whatever you need from me, let's do it. So,
How long were you at that agency for?
I got almost 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah, 2012, 2013. Yeah. The olden times. And then I didn't have another full-time job from 2014 until we started working together.
Wow. Very nice.
Yeah, I know.
You should feel special.
I feel us working together, we seriously have so much fun, and I love what we're building. And it's I get to mix all the things that I love that are we're doing this broadcasting, we're doing a podcast, we're creating content, we're having fun. I've always been involved in tech, so there's the tech angle, and I still get to do a bunch of fun culture things with Fun Day. So I feel I I said a couple times, like, if you hate Monday, then maybe you should change your job, because I actually look forward to Monday, because I'm like, what's going to happen?
Yeah, me too. I look forward.
I look forward because I'm like, I don't know what exciting thing's going to happen. And I feel, if we haven't talked over the weekend, I'm like, hi.
Yeah.
Monday.
I love it. And it also feels good when you feel like you're part of something rather than just like an employee. And when you feel like you're part of something that's growing and you have actual input. And I've always loved those kind of jobs.
There was another, I was reading something in an old Instagram post. You said, about facing fear. And so you had a full-time job and you left that to start your blog.
Yeah, it was Kentucky.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You said you left Kentucky. Yeah. Because I remember this.
So after working at Kentucky in Toronto, I got offered a job. They were opening up a position in the UK for the global team.
Yeah.
For global PR and brand partnerships manager. And they asked me if I wanted to do it. And I was like, great. I have dual citizenship. I can hop right over.
Had you met Damien?
We had met through work, and we actually had just started dating. So I was also like, oh, this is an opportunity. My boyfriend works on the UK team. Yeah. We weren't on the same team. I was on the global team. He was in on the UK team, the regional team. But yeah, it was also an opportunity for that, but just an opportunity for career growth. And so moved over there and did that, learned so much about what I loved, what I didn't love, and really learned a lot, like, again, doing like a lot of those press trips. And that was where I really realized that I really wanted to be on the other side of it. I wanted to be that creator. I wanted to be the person who had autonomy over the things that were being said and the content being created. I didn't want it to go through red tape. I wanted to say what I wanted to say and and put it out there and really build a community. I'm still today, everything I do is so driven by community and bringing people together and having conversations together. And so all I remember is I had been thinking this for so long, and everyone was like, you've worked your way up and you're living in London and you're like, this PR and brand partnerships manager. And inside I was just like, oh God, I hate this. Like, it's just horrible. And then I remember one day just going into the bathroom at work, and I just started crying in the bathroom. I was like, ugh. And then I had my phone and I texted Damien, who's now my husband. And I was like, oh, I can't do this anymore. He's like, I'll grab your stuff from your desk. Let's go meet at the pub down the street, as you do. And so we did. And he said, I know that you've been struggling with this. What would you want to do if you couldn't? I said, I really loved at Style at Home. I loved just being able to write and connect to people and going on these like press trips. I really want to be that person who is building the content. And it wasn't even about working with brands, really. It was just about having my voice and like attracting people that were really interested in what I had to say. And he was like, well, do it. Like, what are you talking about? Like, it's not going to make any money, like all this kind of stuff. And he was like, we'll just cut back, try it for a year. And, and maybe if you need to take something on the side, do some like freelance, all that kind of stuff. And so I was like, okay. And thought, oh, this is great. I'll do this in London. And then he got offered a job in Toronto with the company, which was a great opportunity for us to move back. But when I did, I knew no one. I had been out of that, out of Toronto for a year and a bit. I didn't know anyone in the industry. Everything had really changed. It was like the Drake effect. So Toronto was very different.
Yeah.
So I used my blog as a way to connect to people again. And so and to get to know people. And so I also had like a media kit that I had printed out. I'm like, here I am. This is what it's about. Here's my content pillars. And I just sent it to PR agencies. And they were like, great. And started inviting me to events. And so I started meeting people. And then I also was interviewing people for the Renegade profiles. So I just kind of grew organically. And then an agency reached out, Shine Influencers. They were just starting. And they said, we're just starting. We know you are, but we see like so much potential in what you're doing. Do you want to join? And so it just kind of started growing from there. And but it was really, I keep thinking back to that moment where I was just like crying in the bathroom. I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was wild.
So you decide to quit the job.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you come back to Toronto. And at that point, you've amassed enough wisdom in your career to understand what your next steps were, right? So you put together a media kit and you share that media kit. And then you start going to events, you start meeting people. And what do you what are you doing? You're interviewing, you're asking to interview them, you're asking to what is the ask of people?
I think I was also just getting into that. It wasn't, not everything that I was doing was interviews. So I was also talking a lot about, because I'd worked on the other side of influencer marketing, I also realized that I was in a very good position of understanding what brands wanted. And so...
Okay, so you're reaching out to brands too through PR.
So I was reaching out and saying, and so I was going to events and things like that. But I also realized that, hey, I have this bank of knowledge that could help other people that are in this space.
And other creators.
Yes.
And different.
Yeah.
I remember reading that type of content, creative ways to make an Instagram story or different useful things. And even me being 100 years old and blogging, I really still found it very useful. I mean, I was really happy to read your blog.
Yeah, it was really about how to be intentional with the content that you're creating, and how, again, and it's still what I talk about now. It's how to build a brand out of something, and just how to be purposeful rather than just, because so many people fall into this industry. People are like, oh, I just started amassing a following. They've never worked with a brand before. They don't know how to read a contract. They have no idea how to create content pillars and, be really authentic with their audience, build trust with their audience. And so that was also the kind of content that I was talking about, really supporting small businesses. So a lot of it was branding and business advice for people who were just kind of in that hustle of I want to build something up, and just kind of, here's how to get it going. Yeah.
Wow. And at some point through this, you start to express, there's this one not controversy you ended up in,
but gosh, there's many.
But Casie and I were talking about that you decided to do a story or start producing some content around how you don't want to have kids.
Oh yes, yeah.
And
we were going to get into this.
This sort of happens just after is this recent, or is this years ago?
Is it a lifelong?
So you know what? It actually, the very first time I wrote about it would have been 2017. It was just a blog post.
Yeah.
And that one really took off in terms of how a blog post at the time, just being shared. But it was...
What's the title of it?
It was, I Don't Want Kids and That's Okay.
Oh, that's a good title.
Yeah. And so it was that one I wrote off of the back of, I had been at an event and with a friend, and her friend was there, and we were all just chatting, and she's like, oh, do you have kids? And I was like, no, I don't. I have a dog and blah, blah. And she was like, oh, that's okay. You'll get there.
I hate when people say that to me.
But
I'm no, I won't.
And it was just one of those where I was like, okay, I'm so sick of this. It had been over, and just... Yeah. And it just really, I just started thinking about it on the way home, and I was like, I'm so comfortable with my decision. I've never, ever, I don't even think about having kids because I just know in my gut, I've just never wanted them. And so, and I'm so comfortable, but it's this idea that other people weren't. And my family didn't pressure me. I was very lucky because I know some people do get a lot of pressure. So it was never a thing, but it was this thing where a lot of people just didn't know how to react to it. And they were, it wasn't just okay, and then move on. It was as though, oh, you'll find someone, or, well, do you want kids? Are you trying? It was just this invasive kind of...
That's one, is none of your business. And I don't ask you if you're are you working out? Because you could probably work out.
Yeah.
I work out, but if you don't work out, I'm not going to be
Yeah.
As a society, do we really want people who don't want kids having kids?
100. And that's what I was saying.
No.
No.
I do not want to... manage a baby.
Yeah. But for me, I was I'm just continuing living my life. There's been no decision.
Yeah.
Whereas for me, the big decision is do I want kids? Because that's a huge decision. Mm-hmm. And so I was I just continued living my day to day.
Yeah. It's almost like the people with kids resent that they have a burden that you've been able to just
I think
not
some
have.
people, and I think they
resent the freedom. Some people with kids definitely resent the freedom.
Yeah.
I think definitely I felt
because you lose a lot of freedom.
Yeah, for sure. And that's the thing is that, and I will say and because I talk about it more, that was the first post, the blog post. And then I've kind of talked about it more. And then I was on City Line and I talked about it. And it kind of,
It blew up.
yeah, it did. And it's been, but I will say, like, there's so many mothers that are so amazing and supportive and saying, yeah, like, it's the hardest job in the world. If you know you don't want them, don't have them. Like, I fully support you. But then there's also people who get really uptight about it. And I know that's more of a reflection on them.
What are those type of people like? Yeah.
I think it's just more of a reflection of if they're not in a happy place or they think it's an affront on them. And one of the things I always say is that me talking about, me just like living my life, it's not an affront. It's not mothers against non-mothers. It never is.
Right.
And I can have the utmost respect for mothers, which I do, without ever wanting to be one myself. It's not, but I think that's if someone talks about living their life child-free, for some people, it's the assumption of, well, I have a better life than you. And that's just not the case. It's like, I can also create a community around this because I think people often forget that there's also needs to be a community for women who don't have kids or choose not to have kids because, when you have friends that they all have kids, it's different and it's not, and you also need people to connect to. And it's not like you're sitting around talking about like, fuck kids, like fuck moms. You're not even talking about that.
You don't talk about it at all.
Talk about it at all.
Isn't this great? We can get together.
Yeah.
And don't have to worry about kids.
Yeah, you're like,
but I think that's the assumption.
Who to my baby? That never comes up.
I think that's the assumption. I do think there.
Exactly.
Yeah. Let's just talk about
That's
dogs.
the point.
Yeah.
No, I'm saying that never happened.
That's exactly it. Yeah, you're there. It never comes up.
No.
Yeah, and so, but
Doesn't
but
have to.
does.
You never have to leave. You turn around, it's 3 a.m.
And stay at the bar all night. I can wake up whenever I want.
Exactly. How do you know when to leave?
Never. Last call. Yeah. When they kick you out.
Yeah, exactly. See you at the after hours.
And that's what I always like try to make sure is like to specify is like, it's not this, it's not one against the other. It's just like, if you can talk about how much you love your kids and how great that is, I'm so supportive of that and I love it. But it doesn't mean that like other people can't talk about their life without them and that choice not to, because the choice hasn't been talked about. And there's so many people that do slide into my DM saying, thank you for talking about this because, I've always thought that I had to do this, that this was the next step. And I didn't ever think that I could have that choice of just not having them and have a happy life. And I'm like, girlfriend, my life is so happy. Yeah.
People get really
testy.
Not testy, but like people really either they really are pressured to fit in a box.
Yeah.
This whole thing about fitting in a box. I don't know if it's something that your parents instill or but I never felt any pressure to fit in a box.
Yeah.
But from what I hear from other people, there's a lot of fit in the box type pressure.
Yeah.
Which sucks.
It does. And I know there's like,
You're not fit in a box. Your mom is sailing from,
My mom's sailing to the Bahamas and my dad builds hot rods.
Your box is
exactly.
My box disintegrated the moment I stepped onto this earth.
I was very lucky that my parents, and I know there's like, in certain cultures and it's definitely like considered more of a thing to have kids and more of a norm.
But like if I think of my daughter, what time is it? No, I'm just I gotta go.
Yeah.
I gotta go.
I gotta get out of here.
To put her in a box that is going to drive her into an unhappy place in her life is like the lamest thing that I could do. I mean, if there's any box, it's like, what is going to make her happy box? You know what I mean? All the other boxes are completely pointless to me.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people that feel like even their friends are going to judge them if their kids don't have children.
Yeah.
It's like,
I know. And then the other
all
thing,
this pressure. It's like, it's all tough enough.
And the other thing that moms are always like, they're like, yeah. And they're like, the other thing is that when you do have a kid, then people are like, when are you having another one? And I'm like, can you just not win? Like, are we just not, it's either you don't have them, people don't like you for that. You have one, people judge you for that. You have this, just fucking leave people alone.
Leave me alone.
It's not live. I'm just trying to live and survive and thrive. Just leave me alone.
The thing though is, like for example, we have one. People ask me that question. I don't mind that question.
Yeah.
Though. Like, my answer to that question is we're working on it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And even if we weren't working on it, I would be like, yeah, one's enough.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But having too much of a problem with the question is sort of a bit of, why would someone have a problem with the question? I'm not saying, you know, it's wrong or right to have a problem, but I'm just saying, like, the reason why you'd have a problem with the question is because you feel almost pressured by subconsciously or consciously from other forces to actually have another.
Right.
You know? Whereas I don't really care what people think about how many kids I have.
Yeah.
Would I like more than one? Yes, I'd keep having kids until I couldn't in some ways, you know. So, but that's also a byproduct of feeling so fortunate to even get one because we went through such a problem trying to get the one.
And I think that's the thing is like it's just an inappropriate question in general because there are so many people who try and can't have. So and so it's just like what's happening here is just none of your business, and it's just a very sensitive.
You know what?
Sensitive
if you
topic.
Tiptoe, it's a sensitive topic because you tiptoe into a realm that's out of people's control.
Yeah.
And when you tiptoe into a realm,
be really traumatic for people.
And traumatic.
Yeah.
Like when we weren't able to conceive, you're tiptoeing into now something that is like, look, this is out of my control. It's weighing on me constantly.
Yeah.
And now you're like
making light of it, being like, when are you having a baby?
And like, making exactly.
And you're like, we're trying.
Yeah,
Fuck you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So it's almost like anytime you have a question that is tiptoeing into an answer that is kind of an out of someone's control answer, it's a little bit violating, you know, an area that is not a good area to violate as a question. For a questioner.
And like when people are like, oh, do you have kids? It's not like I'm like, no, I don't have kids. Like, no. Like, I'm just like, no, I don't. It's more of the reaction to that. It's like, you know, it's like, no. And they're like, okay. And then like move on to the next whatever. It's when it's like those replies of like, oh, you'll get there. Or you haven't met. Oh, you haven't met. Or what does your husband think of that?
Whoever replies to stuff like that is crazy.
I know.
Like crazy. I don't know anybody who's on my consistent friend roster who would reply to something like that.
No, that's because you're like surround yourself with good people.
It's okay, you'll get there.
Yeah,
like, come on, you know.
I don't want to go there.
I usually just say no. I don't feel like it.
Yeah,
people are like, I'll have another drink, please. Yeah.
No, I
don't feel like it. Like I also, when I used to do, like I still have a speaker agent, but I speak at a lot of conferences, and I remember people asking, "Oh, question, sure, Casie, are there any brands that you won't work with?" And I'd pause for a second. Yeah, no kids, no animals. People are like, "What the fuck? What a fucking monster!" I go, "Because I don't have any." They were like, I don't have kids and I don't have animals. It would be inauthentic for me to do a post about dogs. I don't have one.
Diapers.
Get off my case. I just love to see people's.
Actually, those would be both pluses for my brother if you ever went on a first date with him.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, he'd be like,
because his wife is like that.
Yeah.
No kids, no animals.
Yeah, if people think you're a monster. I mean, it's not that I love other people's children when I'm like the fun, eccentric auntie.
For me, I'm like, what about other people's animals? What you?
No, like I know, I just sometimes if I don't know a dog, like I get kind of nervous.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Especially if it's like a big dog. Like my sister kind of got like mauled by this dog when we were little, and there was a big dog, and like, but I mean. We had a guest, Brock, and he brought his tiny puppy, and I was like, like the whole like I like them,
size
but I mean
of a gerbil.
No, cool. And I've never had a dog. I've never had a dog.
Love Keith.
Yeah, I know. I think I'd love
to just like ignore you. He'd be like,
yeah, perfect. I'd like to meet Keith.
Yeah, the temperament of somene's dog is a great reflection of their ability, their abilities. Because to get a nice dog takes work.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, I was at a friend of mine's place that has they rescued a dog. Okay.
It's ours. He's a Mexican street dog. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Now I've done my fair share of dog whisperer. Okay. Watching. Okay. And dog whisperer's a little bit of a controversial type character in the dog community. Okay. But believe me, he can get a dog. He can work with a dog. Okay. And I totally Caesar Milan the hell out of this dog, okay? In a good way, all right?
Story about Caesar.
This dog was so nervous when I got there and barking and I'll tell you, I figured this dog out so quickly. You know, the nice thing about dogs is no matter what, you've got them where you want them if you use food properally.
Yeah.
Okay? Like animals, I mean, the whole thing is how you leverage the food, you know? And I'll tell you, I would love to work with dogs more. Okay, they're an interesting little enigma dogs.
Yeah,
but I don't want to own a dog. It's
I mean, you have a kid. That's enough responsibility. That's
yes
for now.
Well, it's not a responsibility.
Are you going to get a dog?
Actually,
though?
It is a bit of a responsibility.
Yeah, it's a human life.
No, not the kid, but the. It's not that I'm afraid of being responsible for the dog. It's just that to actually work with a dog properly, especially at the beginning, and put in the time and energy that it takes to really get the dog you want.
Yeah.
Is way too much time away from my wife and Ariel and other things that I want to put time into because I understand what it takes. I got a puppy with an ex-girlfriend. Yeah. Okay. I know puppies. Yeah. Okay. I know puppies well. And it's a tremendous commitment to get that puppy really going.
Yeah.
And it walks right away.
Yeah.
I would prefer it didn't.
We were very lucky with our dog. He just like rocked up. He was 11 months. He just had an attitude when he came in, and he just is the most chill dog. We didn't even train him. Like he's so chill. He doesn't go off our property. Like
some people, they get lucky with.
We were
that.
very, very lucky. Yeah.
Because if he's not like that,
he's a good pooch.
Yeah.
Dog.
Yeah, that's very nice.
Cute.
He's the highlight of my Instagram.
Yeah, I know.
People are literally like,
where's
love everything you post, but like, I'm just here for Keith.
Yeah.
Just honest.
Yeah. How he's like not that big, right?
Off the table, he'd be like that.
Yeah, I
like medium size.
I look forward to meeting him.
Yeah,
I think
he'll literally just be bye.
I'll bring like a little snacky, and then he'll be like sit beside me, and then he'll go away. Maybe I'll be like, cool, same, bro.
Yeah. I feel you. Yeah.
Love it.
He must have loved the move to Peck.
Yeah, he did. I mean, he loved living in the city too. He because of the dog parks and stuff like that. But yeah, PUC, he likes it. He just needs more like friends. I get so sad when I bring him the dog park and he like tries to play with dogs and they're like, bye.
Aw.
My dog's supposed to.
Aw.
Yeah.
There's a lot of street dogs in Mexico, right?
Yeah. Through Save Our Scruff, we got.
Have you been to Mexico?
Great. Oh yeah, a bunch of times. I shot a Sunwing commercial there. I've been on vacation there.
Oh, you were there at the same time Sasha and I were there.
Yeah.
Street dogs. We don't have a lot of street dogs around here. Around Toronto.
No. I don't think there's any. I think the Humane Society would scoop them up.
I don't think that's really also, given our weather, it's a little not practical, conducive for street dogs.
Yeah,
they would be like street icicles.
Yeah. The weather's a real street dog tamer.
That's going to put a halt on things.
Yeah.
Yeah, like summer only. They go to Mexico. Like, no, that's not happening.
Yeah.
So what are some of the other more successful stories that you've done?
Oh my God. What do you mean successful?
Oh, I like any other viral moments.
Viral moments. A lot of it is talking about not wanting kids.
Yeah, that's what I like. And I feel like I'm actually just really glad that you've had those conversations because I'm in that boat.
I think, but what that's been important for is so even like because I'm all about, I think there's people who are like, you need to niche, and you need to be this one specific thing. And I'm like, but you can be something and talk and have that be your core of your brand. But you also have to let people know who you are and let them know other parts of you, because to be able to build trust, especially if you're selling something. So if you're selling a course or a product, whatever it is, people need to trust who you are first. And so I'm big on storytelling outside of that and letting people into your life. And I kind of do that.
Nobody is just one thing.
But so many people teach that. And I'm just like flicking, I'm like, who is this Instagram guru or brand guru? Like, this is bullshit. So I always try to like just be like, this is what I believe in. So a lot of that, other things that have gone viral are around women's health, especially around like menstruation and painful periods and the stress around having painful periods and the guilt and shame of, you know, being debilitating and not, you know, like having to call into work and people making you feel bad and all this kind of stuff. So that has really, like, a few of those posts have taken off. Again, it's all of those things where I think that people really relate to it and they're like, thank God someone's fucking talking about this.
Yeah, like conversations that people aren't having, but things that people are going through and they're just not talking about it. You're kind of opening the door for those conversations to happen.
Yeah, exactly. So those were kind of the
It's almost extra annoying if you don't want to have kids too.
Well, you know what is when I went to the doctor, she was like,
paid for nothing.
She said, because I have like cysts on my ovaries and they burst, and she was like, yeah, it's like you either go back on the pill or you get pregnant. I was like, well, I don't like either of those options. Yeah. How do you have like
two options?
Viagra? How do you have like a million options of Viagra and like like women just
one or two things and they're both not what you want, but that's all you got.
And that's it. And then otherwise you're like crying on the bathroom floor. Yeah. So yeah,
but don't be late for work.
Yeah, exactly. And like you have to try and hide it. And then recently, like earlier this year, I got diagnosed with ADHD. So talking about that again, of like just those vulnerable things of being like, I can be this one thing, I can be successful in the business that I'm running and do my own thing, but I'm also dealing with all these other things. And
how do they diagnose you with that?
So I was working, my best friend, I was working for her as the brand manager. She has a medical spa called North Medical, which is amazing. Mm-hmm. I love it. And I was the brand manager there. And we were like thick as thieves. And so she had seen me in a professional capacity and a personal capacity. And she had been looking into it for someone else because she was like, oh, ADHD. And I had no idea. Like, I just thought it was for like little boys that were hyperactive. And so she was over one day and she was kind of talking to me about it. And she's like, I've been looking into this for so-and-so. And, you know, it's these sort of symptoms. And as she's telling me, I'm like, it literally sounds like she's describing me.
Looking in a mirror at me.
And then I think she was saying it just to like, I think it was like a nice roundabout way of being like, I've recognized this in you. And yeah, that's where I kind of did a deep dive into it and understood how differently it shows up in girls. Because I've always been very in school, been very like successful and work and, but didn't realize that like the way that I went through life that not everyone else did. And that I was kind of building these structures to help me get through things. And I didn't realize that wasn't like normal, that like other people weren't. And just how much more difficult it was for me, like emotionally, mentally, it was just draining. And so I started talking to my doctor, and luckily my doctor had like background in, you know, ADHD and could talk to me about it and go through the diagnosis because it is very inaccessible and very expensive and could take years. But yeah, she kind of talked me through it and everything. It was just like, tick, tick, tick. Like, it was so, and I was like, how have I lived this long and not realized it? But now it's kind of coming out that like the diagnosis age for women is in their mid to late 30s. Right. Because it's only coming out now how different it is because everything is like researched on boys. So yeah, but it shows up so differently in girls. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, so with young boys, it would show up as them unable to focus.
Yeah, but like hyperactivity. Yeah, hyperactive. Yeah. Kind of like this idea of like bouncing off the walls, not able to sit still. And whereas for me, it's the inability to focus on a task. So if I sit down, I'm like, I got to do this one thing. It's like I'm frozen and I can't get what's in here out. And I will do anything else. But then hyper focusing on other things. So I really started I did a TED Talk actually. And it's interesting when I look back at parts of my life and I'm like, oh, that makes sense now. And so one of them was I did a TEDx talk and I had 3 months to do it. And it was one of the hardest processes of my life. I just couldn't. It was like, I was trying to force it. I was so stressed. I like removed myself from people and I just couldn't get things out, even though, you know, what I've done is writing for my whole life. And I just couldn't, and it was a personal thing. And it was like I was talking about the power of personal storytelling, and I just couldn't get it out. I was like, I know this. And then it was like the day before, I scrapped it all and I wrote it the day before. I memorized it the day before, a 12-minute speech. I had nothing in front of me. I just memorized this whole thing and was just like emotionally drained. And I got through it and it was great. But that process of like not being able to focus, and then at the last second when there's pressure, you just like crank it out. And being able to hyper-focus. But during that time, what I would do, because my brain was just like, there was like a million voices and thoughts, I would go and do a puzzle because I could focus on that one thing. And I was just hyper-focused on this thing. And so now I do pottery and it's the same thing for 3 hours. I go to these pottery classes and it's like nothing else exists in the world except for this one thing that I'm doing. And so those are kinds of the ways that I've managed it. And it's been really fascinating as well. It's been a process of like shame and guilt and all of these like emotional and grief of like the person that I could have been and so it's this kind of like emotional roller coaster, but also realizing like the amazing things that are come from it. Like people with ADHD are just super big thinkers and really creative and can hyper focus on a topic and are really emotionally intelligent and really compassionate and empathic. And so there's lots of good things that came from it, but it's a struggle.
Well, it sounds like a lot like if you're assigned a task, if somebody was assigning you a task, they'd almost be better off like assigning you a different task and like putting the task over there that they really want you to do. You know what I mean?
Or just giving like different deadlines. Like I think now, like sometimes when I work with my friend, I'm pretty sure, because I still do work for North, and I'm pretty sure she gives me like not the real deadline. She like leaves space because she knows that I'll be like, oh my God, I didn't get this done in time. And again, it's like those feelings of shame of like not fitting into this box. And I think back of when I worked for people, and I think back and I'm like, oh my gosh, how I would struggle to get things done on time. And you would create, like you'd have update meetings and you'd be like, oh yeah, no, like I'm almost done this, even though you're not.
And then you spend the whole night staying up all night to get it done. You're like...
And you crank it out and it's amazing.
Yeah.
But it's like internally it's not healthy and, you know, all this kind of stuff. And so when I think back on that kind of stuff, I'm like, oh God.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's been a whirlwind, but I'm happy to know about it.
So what's next for this Renegade Love?
So right now what I'm focusing on is brand strategy. So I had left North Medical, which is where I was doing, I was the brand manager. And so now I'm doing brand strategy for small businesses and for personal branding and influencers. And the kind of next step is, I think we've talked about this, I've been wanting to do this for a while, but building out a course for influencers for how to influence with intention.
Beautiful.
And build a brand strategy and kind of build and grow a sustainable brand. Being an influencer and being a content creator.
It's so important. I feel like there's so many, we have had our brands and blogs and worked on the agency side, and it's kind of, we've been in for a long time, but I feel like there's a lot of people who are, like you said, getting a following, and then they're like they don't have that foundation that we had that was like built on building brands or working with brands. That I think that could be really useful. And when that is ready, please let us know, because we will happily share that with everyone, and I will share it on my personal, I'm happy to, if you want to insight on anything.
Yes, have guest speakers. That would be, because you are the OG.
I'm happy to enroll.
Yeah,
too.
Perfect. Yeah.
And if you want to shoot any of the content for it in this studio, you're more than welcome to.
Let us know. So lovely. That's awesome.
So let us know.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining us.
This has been such a joy.
And driving into Toronto for it.
Of course.
And it's been wonderful. Happy to meet you, because Talia has been saying the most wonderful things about you.
Oh my gosh, she's so sweet.
You lived up to the hype.
Oh, you're so sweet.
And I'm so glad to see you, because I've loved you since the day I met you.
This has been such a joy chatting in person. I love it so much. Thanks for having me.
You're so welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning into this episode with Lauren McPhillips. Visit thisrenegadelove.com to check out her services and read her blog.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow on your favorite podcast platform, or get previous episodes and show notes at castingcreators.com. Bye.